everyone, and welcome to our Richland School District 2 Board of Trustees August meeting. We do want to apologize. As you can imagine, getting back into the beginning of the fall term, there are so many issues that we needed to address that it simply caused us to run over and to be tardy in returning and beginning our meeting promptly. So I do, as chair of this board, apologize to you for the delay that has occurred. Thank you for being here this afternoon. We are happy to see so many friendly faces here with us this afternoon. Again, I also want to say we're very pleased that our board meetings are now being recorded on our R2 TV channel and being aired throughout our district multiple times so that parents and family members who can't be with us in person get an opportunity to see the board meetings in detail. These are unedited board meetings, so they're not being compromised in terms of what's being stated and said. And so we're very excited. I'm very excited about the opportunity to make sure that that level of transparency that we've attempted to reach, we have achieved as it relates to the specific board meeting. So thank you very much for being here, and we certainly want to welcome all of you here, as welcome all of our viewers who will be watching us throughout the week to come. Also at this time, before we have our invocation by Ms. Arlene Ford, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Councilman Jim Manning, who's a member of our Richland County Council. We welcome you, Mr. Manning. Thank you so much for being here. At this time, we will stand and we'll have our invocation and pledge of allegiance by Ms. Arlene Ford.
As we gather here tonight to conduct business for our schools, our students, and our community, let us reflect on the reason we have chosen to be here, to prepare our students for an ever-changing world. And as we prepare for the new school year, let us reflect on last year and strive each year to make the world a better place through our students. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ford. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda and minutes from our previous meeting.
Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve our current agenda and our minutes from our previous meeting. Second.
Been moved by Dr. Burgess, second by Mr. Manning. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote.
Cody? You did?
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. At this time, we will have our faculty-focused presentation. Dr. Brochu.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call on Sue Millette, Chief Academic Officer, to please introduce our faculty focus for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Brochu. We are delighted to have tonight with us Chef William Turner and Principal Keith Price from Blythewood High School, who had an extraordinary experience this summer in Australia, and they have big plans for a student exchange, and so they're going to share some of their learning experiences.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Brochu, and ladies and gentlemen of the board. Chef Turner is passing out an agreement that is currently in place that kind of signifies this exchange program and this opportunity. We had an opportunity this past summer to create a program that currently doesn't exist anywhere else in the world except for right here in Richland 2 between Blythewood High School and a college over in Queensland, Australia. Go. Whenever we first arrived at Australia, we were instantly picked up by the police. Okay, there's a little story that goes with that. This opportunity started between a sister state partnership between South Carolina and the state of Queensland. And many of you know Captain Chris Cowan with the Richland County Sheriff's Department. He was over on a fellowship exchange with their police department about this time last year. And he was teaching a leadership course at their police academy, and part of their experience was to do a 3-day retreat up to a small culinary college up in the mountains of Stanthorpe. And while he was there, he saw a program there that reminded him of something he is very familiar with back home, and that's our award-winning culinary program that's under the guidance and leadership of Chef William Turner. So when he got back, he said, Keith, we saw this thing, and I thought, what a great opportunity if maybe something could work out. Well, fast forward a few months, and Chef Turner and Chris Cowan and I are Skyping with the president of the college over in Queensland about this wild idea that we had to send a few students over there, and maybe they would be interested in sending some students to us. The policemen that picked us up, they were our host for the bookend weekends that we were there before we went up to the college, and they took excellent care of us. When we got to the college, the name of the college is the Queensland College of Wine Tourism. And it's the way I've tried to describe this to most folks is kind of like a satellite campus. It's a part of the University of Southern Queensland. And this campus serves 3 purposes. One purpose is for those students who are pursuing a degree in tourism. They come to a program here to focus on the hospitality side of things, the tourism side of things, and this is in the heart of the winemaking country in the southeastern part of Australia. So there's also a wine certification that folks do while they're there at this college. The second purpose that they focus on is that it's a satellite campus for students who are part of the main university. If they're out in this area and they have a roaming teacher, they can come and have class at this campus rather than having to truck it about an hour away to the main campus. And the third thing is they do something very similar to our CAPE programs here in South Carolina when they talk about internships with local schools. And local schools and local students are able to come there to the college to get internship type experiences, which is what really interested us. Joe? These are some of the pictures. They have their own vineyard there. They have their own wine facility there, and that's part of their training and educational program. They have classrooms that are set up as well. And there's a lot of science and chemistry that goes into the process. While we were there, we had the opportunity to speak to a couple of groups. And one was we were speaking to a group called the National Seniors, describing the experience that we were there to set up. And one, we had the chance to go and speak at the local Rotary. And to give you a little background on this, this program and this exchange is being sponsored by the Blythewood Rotary program, in which I am a member of. And every year, our Blythewood Rotary has pledged to send 2 students over there at no cost to the students. While Chef Turner and I went this past summer, there was no cost to us, no cost to the school. It was all funded and sponsored by the local Rotary. So that's what makes it a truly unique exchange program. And before I get into too much, I want Chef Turner to talk to you about the type of exchange experience that the kids are going to have while they're there. Chef Turner.
Thank you very much. And the curriculum and the way we set up this exchange is going to be a paddock to plate experience for the students, where they'll learn the cuisine, the wonderful cuisine that we got to sample of Australia, and we also got to cook that as well. And so we're going to be able to bring those types of experiences to the students, and it's just a very unique to be able to have this type of knowledge on their resume as students are going to be beginning their careers in culinary arts and food service. And we just had a super time. The hospitality was just unreal, and just we were treated like family as soon as we got there. But we certainly learned how to cook lots of different dishes. We made a laksa dish, which is a snapper that's seared with butter and sumac, which is a spice that's used a lot over in Australia. That's also served with lots of different types of Asian vegetables, which there's a lot of Thailand influence in their cuisine there, along with English and a lot of Italian and Greek, believe it or not. So, but at the same time, it has its own flavor as well. Even in that dish, there was some 15-year-old Chinese sausage, which I just thought was just fabulous and unbelievable. And so students will get to work with Chef Andrew there in the kitchen along with his staff. They'll learn the different cuisine, and they'll learn how to make everything that they have to offer there. And we're going to offer the same type of experience where it's going to be more of a port to plate, where students will learn the different nuances of American regional cuisine, especially focusing on Southern cuisine. And we'll certainly teach the Australian students as they come over and intern with me. We're also partnering with the University of South Carolina and the Art Institute down in Charleston, and they're going to be able to host and take classes at some universities while they're here as well. And so again, just once in a lifetime trip. We had a super time. We got to visit a lettuce farm, and you really got to see how things are not only grown but how they're processed. And here's a strawberry plant farm, and they actually didn't grow any strawberries. It was very unique. They actually just grew the plants. If you ever heard of Driscoll's strawberries, I think that's out of California. They were actually a Driscoll farm where just millions of little plants that they produce, and they have and they hire a lot of students from Thailand, like 10,000 students from Thailand that work and get paid. And Keith and I were just amazed at how the science and the math that's used and the technology that's used to make sure that those plants are separated and bound in groups of 25, and they're paid based on that they can do 100 within a certain amount of time. And if they don't produce at a certain level, they basically get pulled off the line and they don't get paid. And so it's just amazing that they just to see that in action. I'm trying to think, what else do we need to add to that?
Well, in addition, and that's why we're showing these other pictures, in addition to the internship with the executive chef there at the college, they're also going to have the opportunity to work at these places while they're there. They'll be there for a 6-week period of time, and it'll be during the summer, so they will not be missing any classes. And the students identified for this program will be rising seniors. And the students that are also identified for this program will be those that have already expressed a significant interest in moving into the culinary field as a career. This is not an experience that we're sending students over there just to go and enjoy. We're sending them over there so that when they're trying to compete in a global market for some of the best jobs in the area or in the country, having this experience on their resume is going to put them head and shoulders above others. They're going to be applying for those same types of jobs.
Questions, comments from the board?
Fantastic.
Dr.
Chairman,
Burgess?
where's the funding for board members?
Well, one of the things that
I want to go.
yeah, the Rotary is also involved in helping sponsor some fundraising opportunities. So if you want to re-enroll and sign up for chef's class, we may be able to work something out for you.
No, I don't want to cook.
Just want to eat.
I think it's very impressive, though, that the Blackwood Rotary should be commended for the willingness to make that level of commitment, not only for you two guys to go, but more importantly for the students to be able to go at no expense to them. And that can't be overstated, in my opinion, because my daughter participated in an exchange program in Germany, and I know the cost involved with that. That's a tremendous cost. And so to go to Australia is even, I'm sure, more costly. So for them to be willing to pick up the tab for students to go. And the students coming to us will start when?
Not this coming January, but the following January.
14.
These seasons are flipped there. While we were there in the middle of June and July, where you guys were suffering through 112 degrees of heat, we were there in about 39 to 40 degrees of chill. So it's very different. So our students will be going over in our summer, which will be their winter. They'll be coming in their summer, which will be our winter. So. And another nice bonus, you mentioned the Rotary. While we were there and we spoke to the Stanthorpe Rotary, kind of threw out a challenge. Hey, this is what our Rotary is doing for 2 students back home. We would love to see you guys reciprocate that same effort. And they stepped up, and they're going to do that for the same 2 students over there. So they're going to fully support the program from their end.
Any other comments from the board?
Great.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Before Mr. Price takes his seat, I'd like to just put him on the spot for a second. This district and this board is very excited. Many of you probably saw in the newspaper, and Mr. Price has been appointed to the Clemson University Board of Trustees, so congratulations to you.
Board of Visitors.
Board of Visitors.
Yes.
Board of Visitors. Yeah. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to our public participation session. We have one person who's signed up, Mr. Vic Evans. If you'll come to the microphone and state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes to address the board.
My name is Vic Evans, and I was told before I spoke not to mention names, so I will not. I'm just here to let you know the kind of person that we're talking about. Y'all understand? The person in particular, there's a lot of stuff going on this summer that shouldn't have happened. This man didn't know me from Adam's house cat 11 years ago, and I went to school because my son wanted to go to a camp that he was too young to go to. Walked in the door, never met the man a day in my life. Asked him to come to my car and talk to my son and tell him he wasn't old enough to come yet. That man spent 20 minutes with my child by himself, walked up to me and told me, have him here Monday, I'll take care of it. The following year, the same gentleman, we came to camp, asked if my son could become a ball boy at this particular location. I said yes. He has spent countless hours with my son. My son is a senior this year. My son is a 3-sport athlete. He also carries a 4.28 GPA. He scored 1365 on his SATs. And I can tell you 70% of what that boy has become is because of the gentleman I'm here talking about tonight. Now granted, something bad happened. No denying that. But are we going to set a precedent so if it happens again, we're going to let other teachers lose the jobs that we put our kids in trust with? I know some of you out there have participated in sports. I have coached football for 15 years. And I can tell you right now, when you got a group of kids, whether they're working out, lifting weights, they all talk smack. And there's not one person in this room that can honestly say and be honest with themselves that, okay, I knew that smack talk was serious and the others isn't. They all do it. You never know when it's going to happen. And yes, something happened, but he stopped it. It could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse. But this man stopped it. And I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, y'all really don't know this man. And the only people suffering right now are these kids. We all know what's fixing to happen Friday. And ain't none of them got their minds on this thing. And a lot of them, including my son, this is their senior year. It's supposed to be special. But all they can talk about right now is what's going on in our school district. And that shouldn't be. Our kids are our future. They should be enjoying their senior year. They should be more concentrating on schoolwork. But these kids, the buzz is all they want is this person back, and they're not concentrating on nothing else. I thank you for your time. I did not come here to give anybody a hard time. I just wanted y'all to realize the person. Because with everything going on, a lot of times we don't realize the person that we're fighting against. And this gentleman has stood up for a bunch of kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was the only person we had to sign up for public participation. Is there anyone else in the audience who did not sign up but who would like to address the board at this time? If so, please come forward. If not, thank you very much. Next on our agenda, our facilities report. Dr. Brochu.
Yes, at this time I'd like to call on Jack Carter, Executive Director of Operations, to share our facilities report.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have this week's facilities report. Bob Sabire and Ed are here if you've got any questions about that. I'd like to give you a little update on Phase 1 of Richland Northeast. If you've ridden by there lately, you'll notice all the baseball and softball fence is down. We'll start reinstallation of that probably at the end of this week. Fortunately, by going in there and do that, we were able to fix some real problems with the outfield. They actually shared the outfield fence between softball and baseball. We're moving the softball fence in 14 feet because it actually was too far out. We're moving it in 190 feet, which is more appropriate. And we're able to make the outfield at Northeast take about 3 or 4 angles. They had some really weird angles in the outfield where the fences ran, so it'll be a much more symmetrical fence. We have power washed and painted the dugouts. We plan to re-roof them, although that's not part of Phase 1. We'll probably do that a little later on. The JV soccer, lacrosse field irrigation is complete. The field's completely grown in, and they've actually had their first scrimmage on that field. We actually, small thing, painted the goalposts on the practice field, which was important to a couple of people, so we got that done. The master plan is about complete. Before we bring it to you, we do need to go through it with the school so that they've got some input. We've been working with Gary Fulmer and some other folks to make sure we got the athletic piece pretty straight, and we think we do, but we'll sit down with them and review that. Culinary arts has been bid, and culinary arts and health science has been bid and awarded. And we hope to start at the end of this week with the demo so we can get the noisy part done before kids come back. Otherwise, that has to be done after school and at night. And the last thing is the track. We got the Ridgeview track put in with no issues. Went over to Northeast. Hit the hottest days, the days Keith was talking about, those 105, 110 degree days, and some rain to go along with it, and it was cooking the water back out of the asphalt. We were having problems with adherence. So we sent them home. They're going to come back in October when it's a little cooler. We won't have the heat issues, and we'll get it finished. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions on the board?
Chair.
Mr. Manning.
That's an interesting comment. Cooking the water out of the asphalt. Wow. No, that's hot.
It was literally, it would bubble up, and when they try to release the water, the adhesion just wasn't there. So they kept having to pull up parts of it and try to reapply it, and it just wasn't working. So
the real question I have, though, I've driven around some of the schools. I know schools right around the corner. We have teachers, we have parents, we have others coming around our schools, and some of the grass is high and the pine straw hasn't, weeds haven't
I've
been
got
dealt
the schedule. There are 7 or 8 schools left that have not gotten pine straw yet. The rest of them have. They get cut once a week. They're supposed to edge every other cut. So they assured me that they will have it all cut and edged, and all the pine straw, hopefully by this weekend. Now, they worked last Saturday and Sunday, but they lost most of Saturday because of the rain. They intend to work this Saturday and Sunday if required.
And do we look at that kind of further ahead? Because I know we have a lot of parents coming for registrations and asking questions about things to schools, before the school year starts. So is there any way that we could have that ready a little earlier so that we sort of set a...
Start them in June. There's 40 schools, so we'd have to start them in June.
So
we'll try to make it as fresh as we can for the opening day, but we can back it up.
So the district, are we just getting so big that our provider can't handle the district anymore? Or
Sorry?
Are we getting so large that our provider can't handle the rotation as quickly as we need it to be?
He can do it by the deadline I gave him, which was the day kids come back. I can back that up if the district wouldn't like me to do that.
I think it's something that we should consider. I think we have a lot of folks coming to the school early, and we want to set a positive impression for the...
We just have to start it almost as soon as school's out. We could go in and start then. We'd be happy to do it then.
Okay, so definitely something to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Other questions? Dr. Burgess?
Yes, sir. The flickering light at Cobb Trail, where is that light?
I'm sorry?
The flickering light,
What was it caused by?
where is it?
Oh,
At
I wish I
Cobb
could tell you
Trail.
it was completely solved. It's solved in some locations and not others.
So it was like across the school.
It was in one place one day and another place another day. I was in one room and we switched all the light bulbs out from the green light bulbs to what we'd been previously using. It all went away, and then 2 days later it started again. So
we don't
we
know.
brought in the electrical engineer. We brought in the installer of all the lighting control system. We really believe that's where the problem is, but we haven't been able to pin a specific problem down. I think for the most part it's okay right now, but we sort of worked around the system.
Okay. And then my second question, it's really a follow-up to what Mr. Manning was talking about. Last year when we made rounds for the first few days of school with Dr. Brochu, one of the schools was really dirty, for lack of a better word, and I was really upset about it. So, and I know that y'all went in there and cleaned it up and made it look great, but do we have enough manpower or person power to make sure that the schools are ready?
We should be better this year. Our contractors should be better this year because we shut down big portions of school. We were able to go in and clean them. When you got activity going all summer long, all of a sudden at the end of the year, contractors are trying to get in there and clean up behind them. We only, to my knowledge, this year we only have one issue with one school, one significant issue. And I know that Service Solutions has put some extra effort in.
That's good.
They actually have to take people from every school to make it work. It's quite a bit of work during the summer.
Sure. But it's important, I think, for schools to look good.
Well, I agree.
you
So
know,
do they.
and especially in the opening of the school year. And,
You'll tell me some other time what school that was.
well,
I'll
we
make
talked
sure.
about it last year, and you were right on it, so, I mean, you took care of it, you worked with the principal, but I just wanted to make sure.
I suspect it's the same school I had problems with this year.
But I'll be happy to speak to you after the meeting. Thank you.
Other questions, comments from the board?
Chair,
Dr. Fleming.
this hasn't anything to do with the facilities, but you're sort of something you're in charge with. I would like to, if you get our food services to give us a little report on the summer feeding program, and that under your care, sort of.
Yes, and we,
You can do an email or anything like that. I just would like to.
I can give you today what we did last year. We don't have this year's numbers, but last year we served 33,730 some odd meals free during the summer. And we suspect it'll be a little better than that this year as the program is expanded. I just don't have the numbers for the.
Right.
How
How many schools does that include?
We did Richland Northeast, we did Killian. I'd have to go. I'll get you a report and gives it to you by school and by number.
Thank you.
Back to the school. Did we say we were going to hydroseed or hydrosod the grass area at Ridgeview where the portables were moving? If so, did we? And it still looks pretty bald. What's happening with that?
We just found the valves to cut the water on back down there. They've gotten destroyed by having portables on them for so long. And our guys were down there hand digging, looking for all the valves. They found them early this week. Got to rework some of the lines. As soon as those lines can have water applied back to them, we're going to go in and actually seed it rather than hydroseed it. We'll do something that'll come up fast.
Thank you very much. Other questions or comments from the board? Thank you very much, Mr. Carter.
Thanks.
Next on our agenda is our budget update. Dr. Brochu.
Yes, at this time I'll call on Bob Davis, our Chief Financial Officer, to share information with the board.
Thank you, Dr. Brochu. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, you'll recall that actually at your last meeting on July 17th, the legislature was back in session dealing with the vetoes from the governor. One of those vetoes was a $10 million veto that impacted education funding. And although your meeting ended on the night on the 17th, it was actually the next day before the legislature concluded its work. So this is your first opportunity to actually consider the results of that. And again, the legislature did override the governor's veto as far as education funding. They have funded the 2% pay raise. They have funded, on top of that, the step that was added by the Senate in their deliberations. And when we get to the budget presentation a little later in the program, I'll be happy to walk through that. I think the other interesting thing of note is two pieces. One is that you saw an article in the state newspaper just, I believe it was Sunday a week ago, about a proposed funding plan, and Ms. Elmore from School Boards is here tonight. School Boards and SCASA, along with Childs and Allegan, has put together an equalized funding plan. And Mr. Jackson, I think you'll recall that we actually did a school board video last year talking about the potential plan. And again, in the 83 school districts in South Carolina, 60-something of them win under that proposal. They'll actually see increased funding. For the other 20 districts, including Richland too, it holds us where we are. It doesn't hurt us, and that's the good news. So it's in the best interest for the children of the state of South Carolina, but it is not a boost for Richland too in the grand scheme. And again, I'll be happy to talk about that. And I did work on that committee that put that plan together. And as one who worked on the plan, is it perfect in all respects? The answer, Dr. Brochu, is no. But it's a solid plan all in all. I'll be happy to discuss that at the board's leisure. Secondly, you'll recall that there is a bill to study the centralization of school buses, and there has been a study committee appointed, and Senator John Corson, Senate Pro Tem, was kind enough to appoint a school business official to the committee, and I have the honor of serving on the committee. And I'll certainly keep the board fully apprised, and Dr. Brochu, as we progress in that study effort. There are some major questions to be answered as we pursue that question. Sir, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any questions or comments for Mr. Davis? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Next on the agenda is the voting on the executive session items. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we follow the recommendation for student readmissions, except for student number 20, who would be referred back to their homeschool IEP team.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Manning, second by Ms. Brill. Any further discussion?
Does that include the addendum?
That does include the addendum, thank you.
Dr. Burgess. We'll give Jill a moment to get it in, and once she does, we'll be ready to vote. Second by Ms. Brill. There being no further discussion, if you'll cast your vote.
Mine hadn't popped up. Sure. Mm-hmm. Did yours pop up? Mine didn't pop up.
Thank you very much. Motion passes 7-0. Next, the chair will entertain a motion for a student admissions request into the district adult education program.
Mr. Chair, I make a recommendation that we accept all the student requests into the adult education program.
Second it.
Been moved by Mr. Manning, second by Ms. Brill. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote.
You can vote yes for me. Thank you.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Ratification of personnel.
Mr. Chair, I move
Dr. Fleming.
that we ratify 5 pages of professional recommendations, 1 page of professional releases, 3 pages of classified recommendations, 2 pages of classified releases, and for information purposes, 4 pages of in-district transfers.
Thank you. It's been moved by Dr. Fleming, second by Mrs. Anderson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Contractual matter regarding the purchase of property. Dr. Brochu.
Yes, at this time I'll call on Fred McDaniel to share information with the board regarding property to be purchased.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, we are seeking permission to close on a piece of property located on Fulmer Road near Wilson Boulevard for the purpose of an elementary school site for the future.
Any questions or comments from the board? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
So move.
Moved by Ms. Anderson.
I believe we need the dollar amount here. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Dr. Fleming.
I believe we need to add the dollar amount.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. The formal motion of 23.18 acres of land that TMS number map, I will not read that, but I'll have it in the motion according to the options of the 2 sellers. These properties are located at the intersection of Fulmer Road and US Highway 21, which fronts Fulmer Road. The consideration is $370,921.05.
And I'll second that, Mr.
With the detailed information being presented in the form of a motion by Dr. Fleming and now seconded by Ms. Anderson, any further discussion? Hearing none, the board is ready to vote. Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Give you the motion, right?
Appears it is unanimous. Thank you very much. Under old business, the approval of the proposed revision for the general fund budget for fiscal year 2012-2013. Dr. Brochu.
Yes, our Chief Financial Officer, Bob Davis, will share some updated information with the board. I believe you've received this earlier, and I believe Bob has some further information.
Thank you, Dr. Brochu. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, you did receive, actually yesterday, a slight adjustment to the budget we had sent you last Thursday, and that was based on a further review of the revenue estimates from the State Department of Education. Basically, the budget that you adopted on May 10th, based on the House version of the appropriation bill, did include a 2% raise for all hands. After the Senate did its deliberations, you'll recall they added a step on top of it, and the good news is they did provide the funding to provide for the step. So the budget you see tonight does reflect the 2% pay raise and the step, as well as the other components that were in the budget back on May 10th, including the additional social workers, the additional 37 teachers of growth, the funding of Westwood High School, the interventionists, and the other items that were in there. So tonight we're asking the board if they will approve the general fund budget for FY 12-13 of $214,028,056. Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from the board at this time? Ms. Spector.
Mr. Davis, do you mind going over a few of the columns with me, like on page 5 of 8? If I compare that back to the budget that we had in May, had the step increase plus the 2% raise for
Ms.
all
Spector,
employees.
I'm sorry. We can't hear you.
Can you?
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm asking about the increase in the step increase
Yes.
for the eligible employees plus 2% raise to all employees, including benefits.
Right.
On page 5.
Yes, ma'am. Compared to the May 10th budget?
Right.
Yes, ma'am. In the May 10th budget, the figure was $3,161,210 for the step increase for the 2% raise, which included benefits. Now that we've added the step increase to the 2% raise, it's $6,346,443.
Okay. Why did these read the same if they were? Your line item reads the same as May, as 3, but just the amount changed. Why wouldn't we have the same amount back in May?
The description by the May 10th says step increase /2%, okay? And the idea there was the 2% raise included a step if you were eligible for it. But all hands were to get a 2%, whether they were eligible for a step or not. Hence the terminology on May 10th. On the budget you have tonight, it's step increase parent eligible employees /plus 2% raise all employees, including benefits. That's the difference in the terminology. So again, the original May 10th did have a 2% raise, which included a step. But again, if you weren't eligible for step, you still got a 2% raise. Now you get a 2% raise, all hands do, plus if you're eligible for a step, you get additional pay. I hope Ms. Spector, I've made that clear.
Okay. Also on that same page, on page 5 of 8.
Yes, ma'am.
The total required by law, you have a price tag of $8,255,172.
That's correct.
The other figure had 5. I'm not going to read them out, but your bottom figure was $197,030. Why is the same figure on this page?
The 197 is the subtotal for the National Board Certification.
Okay, because when you take it all the way over to page 8 of 8.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just comparing a lot of the figures, and it was not until then that the price tag changed on that next to the last column.
Again, there were subtotals before that. That's why there was no change. Again, the line item that changed was the salary plus the step. That was the change in the budget you're seeing between May 10th and tonight's budget.
Thank you, Mr. Spector. Any other questions or comments on the board?
Chair, just a
Mr. Manning.
very quick note. Bob, I'm certainly in favor of the budget. I was disappointed we did not get the funds for the foreign language. That was never formally in any budgets. It was just a planning number that was given to us. Certainly something that I've tried to champion continued to champion for quite a while now, and it looks like we're not going to be able to do that.
You'll recall that the Senate actually put in some funding. You recall the Education Foundation supplement that actually came to about 20 districts, Richland 2 being one of them.
Right.
It survived the Senate, but then in conference committee, they cut it out largely, and I'll look at Ms. Elmore again, because they basically used it as a tax reduction for businesses, which was welcome to our business community, but bad news for the 20 districts, Dr. Brochu, including Richland 2. But that was the funding that we were hopefully looking at to provide the additional instruction. You had favored, sir.
And I did follow that and understand the process behind it. It's just still disappointing, though, that we talk about 21st century, and that's one of the focuses on this district that we've talked about, and that's a key skill, foreign cultures and language, and I feel like that we're just not there yet, and hope that this is a topic we can bring back up during the next budget cycle, or should we have additional funds maybe come available mid-year, so everybody break out your checkbooks and go buy something, support the businesses and the economy so we can get foreign language in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Other questions, comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I just
Dr.
had
Burgess.
a few questions. Mr. Davis, I just wanted to clarify, really the increase in the budget for for revenue and expenditures is really related to the STEP, 2% raise. It's about $4 million, right? $5 million?
Closer to 3.
Okay. And it looks like the benefits that employees receive, what is the percentage of a benefit package that typically state employees or school employees receive? I mean, because that's what seems to be going up on an annual basis.
Dr. Burgess, you ask an apparently simple question, and let me give you a somewhat simple answer. For budget purposes, when we're looking at a full-time equivalent employee, a full-time person, we generally budget about 29% for fringe benefits. Now, there are some classification categories, part-time people, et cetera, where that will vary. But that's generally the number we use. But please recall, and you followed in the paper, you do realize that the employees this year, for instance, are going to see a 4.6 increase in their health insurance. And you recall that recently the Senate had funded that, the employee portion, and now the Budget Control Board, at the request of the governor in a 3-2 vote, overturned that, and now that cost is being borne by the employees. So even with the pay raise that we're looking at, a 2% plus a step, the employees are going to see a cost that will impact them. So again, and then in January, we'll have another health insurance increase as well, the half-year convention, which we've seen all too often over the last several years. So, ma'am, I hope I've answered your question.
You did. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Burgess. Other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the budget.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the budget as presented by the school board administration.
Second that.
Been moved by Dr. Burgess, second by Mrs. Brill. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. In my haste, the chair skipped agenda item 9.88, so we need to go back to that. Under contractual matters, that involves the climate survey. Dr. Brochu.
Yes, I think we have it showing a little bit later in the agenda in open session, but we can.
We do.
We can do it however you wish. I believe we did.
We do.
Doesn't show later on mine.
Okay, then, I'm sorry, we'll go with it here. Very
Don't
good.
see it later on mine, Dr. Bashir.
That's fine. I'm going to call on Debbie Ham, our Chief Information Officer, and she and her team have been working on some thoughts and ideas surrounding a climate survey that we wish to produce here in the district and hopefully early this fall.
For the sake of the audience, thank you very much. For the sake of the audience and those who may not be familiar with the request for the board, Dr. Ham, would you give a little bit of background on sort of the request, the nature of the request, before going into the details of the request?
We received a request from the board to look at the climate in our schools and in the district, and in response to that, our office, particularly Jeff Potts and I, worked together to try to identify some things that might be appropriate. In your board packet, we identified 2 possible surveys for your consideration, and that was after looking online at a variety of things that school districts around the country have done. One of them is a set of surveys that was developed by Prince George's County that focuses on climate and working conditions, and one of the distinguishing features of this is that in addition to items that are common across categories of employees, it also has questions that are specific to various positions within the district. So teachers might get some items that are particular to teaching, while others in a support service role, for example, would get questions that have to do with their roles and the conditions under which they wrote. So that specialization is a feature that we liked about that and thought it was worthy of your consideration. It can also have additions customized to us if we wanted to do that. We can offer that survey for free. We have a contract for survey software, and as part of that contract, the organization external to us that provides the software will do one external survey with the administration and scoring for us. So that's one option. It has one other thing too. It has very extensive reliability, validity research behind it that Prince George's County did. The second survey is one that was developed by a group by a noted person in the area of data-driven decision-making and survey use in school districts, Victoria Bernhardt. This is a much shorter survey. It is the staff survey that's fairly general in nature and intended to give the exact same survey to all categories of employees within a district. They also will administer and score the survey for us. So our question to you is really, which of the 2 do you prefer? They're very different. Both of them are good and done by a very notable organization, so we need some direction from the board about how you'd like us to proceed.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Manning.
I assume it's appropriate time for comment. I think the thing I like about number 1 is the comments that you made about the fact that it's very specific to different job duties, because I think to have a generic survey will not get at what we're trying to get at. Different folks have different responsibilities and therefore maybe different concerns that I'm interested in hearing about. The one thing about number 1 that I'm hearing that concerns me, and I just want to make sure that it's clearly addressed, is that whatever we do for the survey, I need for the employees to feel 100% confident that comments are confidential, that in no way is this on our website, hosted by us, in any way accessible by any district staff, that this is truly a board-driven survey with external data, that the end result that the administration and staff sees is simply an accumulation of the data and not anything that could be specifically tied back to any individual. So in order for me to support number 1 with all the pieces I like about it, we would just need to make absolutely sure that that's very clear and differentiated separate for our employees to be comfortable, because I want this to be a quality feedback that we get true information.
And we have let them know that it needs to be completely external and separate, just as you said. I don't know, Mr. Potts, do you want to add anything to that?
Really, the only extension that we have with the survey is we basically group the email addresses for our staff and basically send them over to the organization. They break up by the different types of surveys and they send it out to the correct person. They've offered to do hand surveys, and basically they'll just be in a self-addressed envelope that's going to go back to the organization so that they can input that data specifically.
So the email address is just so that they can send back like a link or whatever. And if staff were to do this at school, I'm assuming that there's a comfort level that WebSense or other tracking type software is not going to interfere or see into the responses that are provided. I'm not trying to be, I know it's uber sensitive, but as an employee in an organization that would like to give, feedback, I think in being in IT, Big Brother's always watching, just make sure we've addressed all the particular issues for whoever's appropriate. We just need to make sure that all these things are addressed with our staff so that they're comfortable.
Mr. Manning, we truly have had those conversations and agree completely.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Other questions or comments on the board?
I got a question.
Dr. Fleming?
How does the data from the Prince George County staff versus the Victoria Bernhardt, is it the same type of collation, or they do the service, so even the Prince George will do the service for us?
Not Prince George.
I didn't think so. Okay, yeah. That's just one we were looking at if we wanted to.
Just to use the items that they have, yes.
Okay, so that means we could take theirs and fit it to our needs if we wanted to ask some additional questions.
We can customize it to the way that we need, yeah.
Okay, I like that.
But this was just the general framework.
Just a general framework. So we would have to hire somebody if we wanted to be independent to do that.
Let me clarify. We have a contract for survey software. And as part of that contract, that company, once a year, will externally administer and score a survey for us. We won't do it, but it does fall under that contract. So it's Prince George's County has given us permission to use their survey questions. We can add to them. Somebody else will do the administration and scoring, external to us.
I just want to make sure I was clear on that. I wasn't sure.
And I believe either of these can be customized.
Correct. I would think so. Looking at both of them.
Mr. Manning.
That contract, though, is with the school district administration for that survey survey.
The contract for the survey software is a contract that we have
with the school district, not through the board or. So how do we put that firewall in place if it's with the school district that has that contract that, you know what I'm saying?
We can certainly stipulate that all the results come back to the school board.
It's aggregate data, not individual responses.
No, it won't be individual responses. The data that we'll get will probably be item by item data.
I just want to ensure there's no way that anybody on administration could get to the individual data. And with the contract being held by the district, I don't know how to be comfortable ensuring that nobody on administration as the holder of that contract can get to individual responses.
Well, that's why it's reported as aggregate.
I understand, but it may be reported as aggregate, but somebody has that information that
the company does.
I think we can specify who the results should come to. Would you feel comfortably put in a letter that all the results are supposed to be sent to the chairman of the Board of Trustees?
And that no staff member now or in the future could access any individual responses. I just want to, I know I'm being extremely anal about this, but I want to make sure that that verbiage is somewhere in there. Because I want to have comfort when I tell people that nobody else can access this but the board, that is in fact the case and that there are no circuits that somebody can go outside of us to get those details. I just want to be clear about that.
And being the person who asked for this to be done in the first place, I couldn't agree with you more, Mr. Manning. The last thing I want is for this effort to be derailed because it is perceived that it is anything but transparent and confidential in this case. And that is, in fact, the goal from the very beginning when I asked that we look into doing this. And the second part of it is that we also make a decision so that we can get it administered before learning starts, and learning starts on the first day of school. So my other concern is to make sure we get this out, get it done, get the results back, and so that it has minimal impact, if any, on the start of our school year. Other questions? Ms. Anderson.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'd like to know, I know that
we talked about this and you requested to have it done. But what do we plan to do? What are the plans once we get the study, the results of the study? Will the board sort through it and come up with decisions, or is it going to be turned over to administration? What are your thoughts, or what are the board members' thoughts on how we're going to deal with the results of this climate study once we get it done? I think we need to have those thoughts in place prior to requesting the study. How are we going to handle it? How are we going to deal with it? Who's going to deal with it? So forth, so on. I think that would be a good thing to have in place up front.
I will allow other board members to respond, but it is in place in my mind, Ms. Anderson, how we're going to handle it, but I'll allow others to share their thoughts on it.
And I'd like to hear yours too.
Well, as a board that requested the study, I would expect that the results would come back to the board, and then the board would take that data and make some recommendations in terms of changes, improvements, or use it as we see fit as it relates to the school district. But in fact, it would come back to us, not to the school district.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Other comments or questions from the board?
I just have a
Dr.
few
Burgess.
comments. To follow up, I do think it's important that the company that performs the survey keeps the individual responses but reports back to us only aggregate data.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that should be made clear in like a letter or something. I mean, we do that all the time at my place. We contract with companies to do surveys, blah, blah, blah. What I would like to know is I'd like for Dr. Ham or someone maybe to report to us the psychometric properties of these instruments. Are we looking for descriptive data or inferential, or what are we doing? I mean, we're going to make decisions, correct? So we probably need some of that information.
We can
you
probably
get that?
send you a link to the information that's available, because they have several reports online that are available.
Okay.
And I think another suggestion too, just to make you feel comfortable with the process, would be for us to go ahead and put in writing the specific information about who gets the data, the kinds of files you would like
Right.
them to keep versus make available to you, and we can run them by the chair, if that would be all right.
Or to anyone in the school district, because that way people know that when the data is reported out, it's just aggregate, not Stephanie Burgess, her responses. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Burgess. Other questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Mr. Potts. Thank you, Dr. Ham. Thank you, Dr. Burchue. Next on our agenda, under new business, no action requested, is a proposed revision to the policy listed the use of electronic communication devices in school. Dr. Burchue?
Yes, I'm going to call on Debbie Ham once again. She and her team have been working on this along with principals, our design team, etc. This has come up, I know, for the last 2 years since I have been here, and a great deal of interest in moving forward with the policy revision.
And this has come up frequently, and you may remember a couple of years ago we actually did a pilot looking at the use of cell phones for instructional purposes. But the policy really deserved reconsideration for 2 reasons. When it first went into place, people were talking about cell phones and pagers. Of course, the pagers are kind of, gone, and in addition to cell phones, students have access to things like e-readers and their own computers, and it wasn't clear what was and wasn't included in the policy. So in the course of doing this, we've tried to do 2 things. First of all, to make it clear that we would allow students at all grade levels to bring things like computers and e-readers to schools. We've gotten requests from parents, particularly with e-readers, to allow kids to bring those. So to make clear that those things are allowed for our students. And then the second part is to allow high school students only to bring cell phones to school and to use them in schools in designated free zones. We worked closely with our council on this. There are certain requirements of law about how you handle confiscation of cell phones, etc. And so we have this policy for your review, and it's our recommendation that you adopt it. And we have high school principals on hand, and Cleveland Smith and I both worked on this. He did most of the work with legal counsel, so all of us are available to answer any questions that you have.
Questions or comments from the board?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. On page 2, where it says elementary and middle school, It says elementary and middle school students may not use or display cellular phones. Did you mean all ECD or just cell phones?
Just cell phones. We want to make it clear that elementary and middle, the same policy that we have in place now about cell phones for elementary and middle school students stays
But
in
what
place.
about a
We don't
pager?
allow those.
Because you got pagers up here, beepers. I'm just asking. Because a student may find a way.
We may want to add those. We can
Okay.
add. You want us to
I'm
add
just
pagers
asking. There's
and
a list of
You
ECDs.
are so good at scrutinizing these things. I mean, a million lawyers look at it, and you catch that.
And then there's another one, but I have to find it. Page 3. I work with students, so I know. Something about violation of this policy may result in discipline. I think you ought to put shall. But I'm not an attorney. But that just seems to get a little more bite to it.
Okay.
And I'll look at anything else. But those were my suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burgess. Other questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chair, this is a
Manning?
quick comment. I
Yes,
applaud
sir.
our IT department for tackling this issue. An IT director, I struggle with this as much in the workplace as you guys do in the school and many other agencies that I hear from with employees and use of it during the workday and using work computers for things, but also using their private cell phones and other things. It's a challenging issue. And I've heard from a lot of folks that have said, this is a bad idea and we shouldn't do this. And, but I think you guys are doing the right thing. We're putting in a policy. We're working our way through it, trying to figure this thing out. And as we need to adapt it, we adapt it and move forward. And I realize it's a difficulty for you as principals and administrators and teachers to deal with this thing, but this is everywhere, not just in the school district. And so thank you for tackling this tough issue and bringing this to us.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Other questions or comments from the board? Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Ham. Next agenda item is ESEA flexibility waiver. Dr. Brochu.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I believe that not only Dr. Ham, but others in this room have been very involved in talking through and working with groups such as the School Boards Association and SCASA and a host of others as we are looking at the new ESEA flexibility waiver and what those results might be for our district and certainly for our entire state. At this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Ham to share a little bit of information as she has been on committees and groups working with us directly.
Let me give you sort of a little preview of the information that we put together. First of all, Debbie Elmore, Ms. Davis already mentioned her from the School Boards Association. She's here to provide some background information from the standpoint of some of the issues that have emerged in both the process and the content that is in this waiver. Mr. Potts is obviously the one who deals with the nitty-gritty of how the specific formulas and things work, so he's here to provide that kind of information. And I'm the one to kind of introduce it and give it a general overview. So I'm going to kick it off, then Mr. Potts will be coming up and will be followed by Debbie Elmore. I think the first thing is to talk about this waiver and the history of it. I guess one of the questions is, so how did this happen? Why are we changing the system? It actually comes from the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that was first passed in 1965 and established our Title I schools. It was part of the war on poverty. Later, under President Bush, it was reauthorized and called the No Child Left Behind Act. And I think, when that first was passed and we talked about the requirement that in 2014, 100% of our students would score proficient, we knew at some point that was going to crash and burn. So there was some emphasis in in Congress to try to make some changes prior to this time. But there are lots of priorities for Congress, and when nothing happened, the U.S. Department of Education was able to use its authorities to provide waivers from that mandate. So it's no longer actually called No Child Left Behind. It's ESCA and its waiver, and the waiver requires that states meet certain requirements. I want to kind of quickly run through those, and then Jeff's going to give you the details. The first thing that has to be included in any state's waiver request is something called college and career ready expectations for all students. They have to be college and career standards in the areas of language arts, English language arts, and mathematics. Those two areas have to be covered. States may add additional areas if they want. South Carolina added science and social studies. And we have done that through the English language arts and mathematics through the state's adoption of the Common Core, which you've already heard a presentation about. The second part of that requirement is you have to have a rigorous assessment of those standards. And South Carolina has participated in a consortium of states that's putting together a testing system called Smarter Balanced that not only includes end-of-year assessments but formative assessments as well. So that's how the state is complying with that requirement. It also, the second requirement is that the state develop a differentiated recognition, accountability, and support program. And there are two important things that are requirements there. One is there has to be differentiated support to underperforming schools, and in particular the state needs to identify the lowest performing schools, and in South Carolina those have been called priority schools and provide intense intervention to support those schools. And you may have heard some of the talk about even all of those being put under the umbrella possibly of one school district. That isn't part of the waiver, but that's part of it, fits in with this effort. And the second thing is you have to have a system for recognizing schools for outstanding performance. In fact, Condor Elementary was one of those schools that was recognized for the progress that it's making with its students here in our school district. So those are the two requirements of that part. The third requirement is supporting effective instruction and leadership. And that boils down to two things. One, having a particular teacher and principal evaluation system that includes assessments of student achievement. And the second part of that is to differentiate the professional development for staff based on the strengths and weaknesses you find in the evaluation. And South Carolina has proposed a grading system for principals and teachers. They'll get a grade of A through F, and a value-added assessment of student performance is a significant part of both of those. The last one, and this is not specifically available now in the public information about the waiver, but the federal government does require it, and that's reducing duplication of unnecessary burden, and particularly removing duplicative reporting on the part of school districts. So those are the four requirements going into it that the state had to meet in order to get a waiver approved. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Potts to give you more details about certain parts of it.
I'm going to spend a little time in Principle 2, which is that state accountability, the new accountability system that we have. I'm not going to bore you with formulas, but let me just give you some idea of how things have changed in terms of how schools and districts will be graded within the state. We used to have an all or nothing system. Schools and districts were graded on objectives from ELA and math, and in all subgroups within the school, if a school missed one subgroup of any objective, they essentially did not meet AYP for that school. Now, as Dr. Ham said, schools are going to be graded on an A through F system, which is going to be able to, I guess, disseminate schools at the higher level and at the lower level in terms of needing support and getting recognition. One of the big things that's different about this new waiver is that they've added two subgroups. They've added subgroups for males and females, and that was not part of AYP. Before, a percentage of students within the school would have to score proficient in order for a specific objective to be met. And I think if you remember correctly, every couple of years that objective got higher and higher until the 2014-15 year where all students were required to score proficient. This new system uses scale score means instead of percent met. So essentially every student receives a scale score those get aggregated or averaged together. Within this system, though, they still do have an increasing system where every year the scale score average that's needed ends up increasing. A big thing that's different in the new accountability system is the subgroup. In order for a subgroup to be labeled the subgroup for a school and count, 30 students is the minimum number that's required. Under the old system, it used to be 40 students. One of the big differences in terms of what's being graded, schools used to be graded on just ELA and math. There has been a science and a social studies objective that's been added to all the schools. And it's a weighted system where reading or ELA and math get the highest kind of priority of weight, and science and social studies objective is a much smaller value. At the high school level, graduation rate is included still. They look at each of the subgroups for graduation, and 30%, it counts 30% towards a high school's rating. There used to be up to 37 objectives that a school could be essentially graded on. Now there are as many as 77 objectives, and as always, like I said, it was a not met or met system, and it's now moved to an A through F. In looking at this first chart, it really shows how the annual measure objective, or the scale score, is going to go up every single year. Just to let you know, a 600 for elementary and middle school is the objective for met and pass. So we're already starting at 630 for elementary schools and 624 for middle schools. That's much higher than the value for an average of met. And if you notice, by the year 2017-18, students are really going to be expected to, on average, score exemplary on pass, should we get that far with pass. At high school, kind of the same thing. We have an increasing value for HSAP, of the objective that's going to be met. One of the things that the state hasn't provided yet in their accountability manual deals with graduation rate AMO. They've told us what the objective is going to be in the year 2017-18 of 90%, but they haven't showed us what the progression is to get there. And just to let you know, last year, or in 2010, only 8 high schools in the district had a graduation rate of 90%.
8 high schools in the state?
In the state, yeah. As Dr. Ham mentioned, within the accountability structure, it's designed to give support or rewards to schools. There are 2 levels of rewards. There's a level of performance and a level of reward for progress. And then there's 5 levels of support: priority, focus, challenge schools, off-track schools, and priority reorganization. Dr. Ham also mentioned about Principle 3, which is supporting effective instruction and leadership. Right now, there is an evaluation structure that's being built. This is getting less attention from the waiver than it is the A through F piece. The proposal is to modify the state's evaluation plan for all teachers and principals for the 2014-15 year. Right now, there is a beta test going on in schools, which were essentially, I guess, our priority schools. Next year, volunteer districts will be able to participate in this teacher and principal evaluation, and the proposal is for the year 2014-15 that all teachers and principals will participate in this evaluation structure. This chart kind of gives us an idea of what percentage of basic components make up a classroom teacher's evaluation. And if you look closely at the very top line, it says student growth is 50%. And if you look towards the bottom, there's a classroom value added, which is 30%, and a school value added, which is 10%. So essentially 70% of a teacher's evaluation is going to be made up strictly of test grades. This gets really complicated when we start looking at what happens with mapping students at a high school level, where you're no longer talking about looking at cohorts of students that you're comparing, but just one set of students and then looking at another set of students. If you think of HSAP, where you have a set of students one year and a set of students another year taking that examination. For non-classroom teachers, they will also have an evaluation. Only 30% of their evaluation is going to be made up of test scores, and that's specifically of the school value-added model. Think of PE teachers and band teachers, even certified media specialists, guidance counselors would be weighted or get scores under this system. And the principal evaluation method is similar, but 50% of a principal's evaluation is going to come specifically or directly from student performance at the classroom level. And one of the things that Dr. Ham mentioned earlier was about, let me jump back for a second, was about reducing burden on school and redundancy. One of the interesting things is this does not replace the state accountability system that we already have, the excellent, good, average, below average. It doesn't replace that. It basically, they're two separate and independent systems that are going to be working at the state level to rate our schools and our district. With that, let me turn it over to Debbie Elmore. She has some more information she'd like to share with you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you so much. I was so pleased when Debbie asked me to come and respond, so much so that we have decided to add this session to our school law conference on Sunday morning. So certainly we applaud you for listening to this presentation because it is a very complicated issue, as you can see. So I do thank you. I also want to just take a moment of just, I guess, a personal privilege just to thank Richland 2. I am one of those raving fans of Richland 2. I think the expertise and the experience of Dr. Brochu and Bob Davis and Debbie Ham, Jeff Potts are just so invaluable for us as an association. I cannot tell you how much we've depended on them for assistance on legislative issues or policy issues. So they are just absolutely wonderful, and we appreciate you lending them to us from time to time, so we do appreciate that. I hope that one of the things that you caught as Jeff was talking, I certainly did, he used the word is now expanded. I mean, he didn't say expanded, but he said is now gone from 37 objectives to now 77. We've added more subgroups. We now have an A through F system where before we had a met or not met. The bottom line for us was we had hoped that the waiver application was an opportunity for the state to be able to take the state system, which was working fairly well, tweak it, streamline it to meet so that we would cut down somewhat on the confusion, the amount of reporting, the amount of paperwork that districts were having to compile, but actually what we ultimately ended up with is now something even bigger and even more complicated. And just so, I'm not going to take a lot of time here, but I do want to make sure, I want to start out with the good, that we do support the all, not having the all or nothing component of No Child Left Behind being removed. However, going to this A through F system, which relies, and Debbie is, a teacher here, which relies on an average, what that does, and we saw with this ratings release, it pushes the middle. It pushes the middle to the top or the bottom. So what happens is once the state now sends its ratings, because it's on a different formula, and they will come out in November, you're going to see why discrimination. So where the confusion still remains. So a lot of the components that were flawed of No Child Left Behind remain. And one of them, and the biggest, of course, is the continued over-reliance on test scores to label schools which have major implications to schools and the communities. So that remains. Not only now are we not saying met or not, we're actually going to call schools Fs or Cs or As. We did have the choice under the waiver plan. I do want to point this out because I think it's important. We had the choice of just taking what the targets were, looking at where our students were as a state, and then having a goal of reducing in half the percentage of students who were failing over a period of 6 years. So the federal government was somewhat saying, you know, you have this option under this waiver to lessen the complication. It also does not eliminate, again, the confusion by the public and parents about what these A through F ratings grades are, and then when the state ratings come out, when you have excellent, good, and average. The Education Oversight Committee just recently put out a comparison chart looking at how the state rated schools last year, comparing them to the ratings that were released. And there were some wide variances here. I don't know, I can certainly get this for you if you'd like that. But just basically to show you that you've gone from having 318 schools that were rated excellent, and 211 schools rated good, now to 500 schools rated as A and 295 rated as B. So to kind of give you that, you know, and then if you compare that then to the overall test results that are used to go into rating that, there were certainly improvements. Debbie, you can chime in there. I wouldn't say they were large improvements statewide. I mean, there are certainly some improvements more so in individual districts. So there is that variance. So that's the other issue. Again, the large issue for us as an association, a school boards association, it does expand the overly punitive measures for schools that are not performing well. In fact, we believe that the state superintendent outlines things that the State Department, the state superintendent can do for low performers that are beyond what is required in state law. To the point, and I can just share real quickly with you, schools that continually do not improve under AYP, he can actually take over a school, convert it to a charter school, create a separate board for that charter school, or provide for a private, they're now charter school management companies and organizations that operate, or to hire a company to come in and manage a school and take it over. There was some talk recently, an idea that he talked about was to create a state school district where he would put all these low-performing schools. This, again, the concern for us is it is beyond state law, what's required in authority. The other issue that is of concern for us is the statement that we want to go to one system, this system. So that would require, I guess, an elimination to the state accountability system or changes to accommodate. So that is a concern for us as well. In the area of, in the area of the teacher evaluation, of course, this issue is just now getting out. It was discussed at the state board meeting. I will tell you that tomorrow you can look for an email from the association where there were some things that were said about the association that we want to clarify for our members during the meeting about our support for Race to the Top, and inferring that because we supported Race to the Top, we support the evaluation system guidelines that have been put out, and we have some serious concerns about those guidelines, as Jeff mentioned. So you will be getting information, but again, the over-reliance on a test to grade teachers A through F. There was some, I would say, some very eloquent testimony of teachers at the state board meeting who raised some good points. One of them is, you know, if you are going to label teachers in struggling schools and strictly grade them by test scores, who's going to want to teach in low-performing schools or struggling schools? Who's going to want to teach children in special needs? Who's going to want to? So from a policy and from a school board standpoint, that is a huge issue. How are you going to recruit teachers to come and teach if they're going to be graded A through F on a test that is not, that's not really, I guess it's vertically aligned, so there's some issues with that. Those are some serious questions that we have. They are being tested. It will be interesting to see, of those 22 schools that are in this beta test project, how many of them. One thing we learned was there was an option, apparently, under these 6 schools that they could choose. They didn't have to choose this one, which was new to us, so we'll have to find out if these 22 schools now are going to change from the system. Because the other thing I want to point out, too, is that the guidelines were not posted, make sure, were not posted for the public to view, these specific guidelines, until recently. So when you hear, well, we had stakeholder meetings in January and December, we had this on, those were not part of that original application. So it is just now getting out. Teachers are coming back, and I'm sure this is going to be a huge, huge issue as soon as this gets out.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Manning.
Is that for is this in lieu of current teacher evaluations that we have in place, or is this in addition to current teacher evaluations that are in place?
That's a good question. That's a good question, because you have state law
Right.
that prescribe teacher evaluations and hiring and firing and contractual issues between teachers and the school board, the school district. So that is, yeah.
And staff resources for principals, administrators having to administer the possibly 2 tests and aren't aligned. And where does this data for teacher evaluations, is that posted? Is this public information now, or is that?
That was a question that was asked. That was a question that was asked by a teacher. I don't see how they would be able to keep that secret. I mean,
Right.
that would not be. I mean, a parent's going to request what grade their child's teacher has gotten, or what were the grades of a teachers in a school. So I don't, of course that has to be tested. That's speculation on my part, but that I believe would be a difficult thing to hide because it's in the public.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the board to Debbie?
Go
Dr.
ahead,
Burgess.
Dr. Fleming can
Dr.
go.
Fleming.
I've been around so long I can remember before No Child Left Behind. In the 90s, we had a evaluation and accountability system in South Carolina, and I think at that point that was the greatest expanse and progress we ever made in South Carolina. It was in the late 90s until No Child Left Behind. And then when that came on board, we looked at each other and we looked at each other and said, well, this thing's going to implode. There's no way this is going to last. And I see the same thing here. I don't see anything. I mean, I'm not going to jump up and down and get all excited about it. It's just, it's totally unworkable at this stage. Now, I don't know, maybe sometime in the future somebody will get in charge. We'll have some real leadership at the state level or national level to get an accountability system that can work. We've had them before. In fact, I remember in the 90s we had our own in district too. Our own accountability system. Do you remember that? A long time for those who've been here, and we would award schools, small, very small monetary recognition for achievements. And again, those were the times when I think we had our greatest advancement in academic achievement. But I think this is something we have to live with. I think it's something we have to work with. But again, it looks like another program that, to me, as a school board member, will implode upon itself even quicker than No Child Left Behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fleming. Dr. Burgess?
Thank you. My questions are probably for Mr. Potts, but Debbie, you can stay, and Dr. Ham. Go to the slide where it says comparison of old AYP to new AYP. And thank you for clarifying what those percents meant. I was like, what is he talking about? But thank you for clarifying that. My question is, what is the difference between, for example, in high school, ELA 22.5% will be calculated as part of the total score, and ELA percent tested 7.5%?
Under the old system, for ELA, you got basically 2 points. One, if you met the objective, and another one if you had a large enough percentage of your population taking the examination. So you're not taking your top 5% of your students and having them take it.
But that's pretty much a given. I mean, pretty much everybody is required to do it, correct?
Right. That's right.
Except there were times where they were rumored that teachers would put students in study hall, encourage them to stay home on the day of the test, significant numbers to skew the results.
Yeah.
I get you. Okay.
And so, part of the AYP was you have to, percent tested and an objective for how the students did on it were two separate objectives.
Okay.
And in the new system, they are as well. They're just weighted much differently now.
Okay. And then I think it's 2 more slides that I just want to make sure I understand. The current pass score would be 600, but by the year 2017, it would be 648 for middle and 660 for elementary.
Yeah, currently for all subjects on pass, 600 is the level of MET. Notice that the level, average level right now where students have to meet an objective is already well above that level of MET and increases for the next.
But in the year 2017, they'll have to meet, in order to meet, it'll have to be 648.
648. And it starts getting really close to the proficient level.
Okay,
that
was my next question.
Yeah.
Since you pointed that out, one of the things too on the teacher evaluation component, in addition to how the students in the teacher's class scores on that test, a component of how the school students and the school's rating grade is also added into the individual teacher's evaluation. So it's twice. So as you can see, it becomes very, very difficult. It's like 30%.
Debbie, why are you still standing? This November, when the state test data comes out and the report card rating comes out, this one is already out. Who's going to facilitate helping the public, parents, and others understand what these 2 separate ratings are going to mean for one school that may have a great rating on one and a C or D on the other?
That's a very, very good question. Good luck, Mr. Jackson. I'm not trying. It's really, there are no resources. There have been no assistance to be able to help school districts be able to. Yeah, I know Ken's got a big job, for sure. It is going to be the only thing is it's a totally different formula. It's a different formula than what the state uses. It's the only way to explain
But to the general public, they're going to see a grade of C and on the other one, proficient. Or a grade of D and proficient on the other.
Right. There's actually some schools that were excellent last year. I think it was very few that got an, no, it wasn't. It was the other, at risk that are A's. There was 4 or something. Or at risk that would just got an A. How do you go from at risk to an A? So that's when those other ratings
Other questions, comments on the board?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, and I had 2 more. I'm sorry. Or 3 more. CVA is classroom value added. I looked at that and I was like, that means somebody had a stroke. But anyway, maybe it was me. That means that it's based on test scores?
Yes.
So that will be 30% of the teacher's composite evaluation.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
I'd like to add one other piece to that too. It has to be on a test that's given uniformly across the district. It's not just a test that the teacher comes up with or something particular to their class or their project. It
has to be
the same one that's given to all students at that grade.
Okay. But it'll be a 30% composite
for the school
weighting for that particular teacher. Is that correct? Okay. And then the consequences if you make a D or an F, you said something that they could, or maybe it was was it Debbie that you said that they could turn it into a charter school? For the school district or the school itself?
Yes.
So who's going to pay for that?
The school district. The school district and the state.
Well, I want y'all to find that out. Please, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Because I know it'll happen. They'll be handing us the bill.
The school districts will pay for it.
But we won't be held, they won't be held accountable to us, correct?
Correct.
But we have to pay for it.
Correct.
And then my last comment really follows up on what Dr. Fleming talked about, this is just another formula, but is it, and I'm just asking y'all because I don't know, is it achievable and does it help provide direction for, to do things differently or be successful, or is it just a way to?
It's a way, Dr. Burgess, to cover up Bush's No Child Left Behind, which was a buzzword that just took off running. They implemented it, put it in place, and nobody to this day can explain what that means. And that's where we are today with the report card in South Carolina. Our standards are set so high in South Carolina, higher than any other state, and we cannot reach, it's unreasonable to expectation the way we have South Carolina set. Your other states, Texas and those states, have theirs set lower, and that's why you find these states who reach their goal because their goals are set so low. So what we're doing here is just actually playing with numbers, playing with games, and playing with education. It's the bottom line.
Mr. Manning.
To Melinda's comment, I just read an article recently in one of our email blasts that went out that the state of New York is actually piloting the integration of special ed children into regular education, something we've been doing here in South Carolina for a long time. And so I think that speaks to the difference in how we evaluate between different states and what things look like. I think in the short term, this is coming. I do think it's detrimental. As we said, how do you get teachers to want to teach in either perceived low-performing schools or schools where they don't feel like they can perform? Once again, we've put the onus on the classroom teachers, our principals, and I hope that the district office and administration here will have some sort of plan on how to support our folks in the schools that are the ones that are having to make this happen and to perform. And so I don't know what that plan is or how it is, but I would certainly like to see us align ourselves as a district in a way to best address this, because it's coming whether we like it or not. And just hope that the detriment to my daughter and others coming along that one day will be in the workforce will still choose education. I chose it and left because it's difficult, is a field, and I think we're going to see a lot more good people leave and go into other careers because it just gets to be too much, and we need to support them the best way we can.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Other questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yes.
make one more,
Yes,
and I will shut up. I just want to make sure, too, that you understand that this is being tested for 2 years. So if this were to go statewide as the evaluation, it would require legislative and state board approval, just to make sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ham. Dr. Brashew. Next on our agenda, we have the second public participation session. No one has signed up. However, if there is anyone here who would like to speak or address the board, please feel free to come forward and do that at this time. Okay, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the agenda items for our next board meeting. Dr. Brashew.
Yes, our next meeting will be August 28th at North Springs Elementary School. We will hear a student focus report, a budget update, a report on evaluation and baseline data for one-to-one computing initiative, a report on our elementary magnet programs, an update on our midwinter break, and approval we will be seeking from the board for the revisions to policy JICJ and JICDAR, which we looked at this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Brashew. Are there any additional items that the board members would like to add to our next board meeting or any future board meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like for us to look at the athletic form for sports participation. I had a parent call me, and I believe the form said physician signature, but there are other folks who can provide that service, and this person was pretty irate. So I told her the form, you know how we do for commercial driver's license and bus drivers, this form said physician signature, and it didn't have a space for example, a PA or a nurse practitioner or somebody else who could do that service. And they were irate because they went somewhere and paid money, and the form was not honored by the school district, this school district. So.
I thought we had generic forms.
Well, She just called me, so I didn't see the form. I don't know. If we could just look at it, that would be great.
Thank you, Dr. Bird. Dr. Brochure will make a note of that, and we'll look at what the requirements are for an authorized signature on that form. Other
Question,
Ms. Anderson.
it might can be answered tonight versus putting it on the agenda for next meeting. I was questioned about students having to pay $50 for their, what are these, not the iPad, what are these things they're getting?
Chromebooks.
Is it the protection plan for those? Oh, so they're paying for the protection plan.
Liability.
Liability, okay, and that's non-refundable. Okay. Did they pay for do the same thing at Mueller Road when they got theirs?
Would you like me to respond? I can give you some
Yes,
background
yeah.
information. Previously, what we asked parents to do was to buy theft protection when they took their computers home. And they bought that through a private insurance company. And that's all it protected them from, was the theft of the device. In all cases, we cover the devices while they're at school, but when kids take them home, the danger that goes to a parent is if you break one, it's like losing your book bag or whatever, you're responsible for that device. And at $500 a device, that can become very expensive for a family. So we have asked parents to pay $50, and we've actually reviewed that with the board at a meeting where you were absent, but there is a provision on the form that they fill out that if that's a financial hardship for the family, they should see their school administrators, and those administrators have some directions on working with families that have a difficulty paying the fee. If you are a family that has a difficulty paying the $50, basically an insurance policy, that they should see their school administrator, and their administrators have some options that they can exercise to help those families. So please refer them, but we don't want anybody to be stuck with a $500 replace the computer bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ham. Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Therefore, I don't need it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
for
Anderson.
explaining that.
Other items to be added to the agenda for next week or future board meeting? Hearing none, thank you very much. At this time, we will allow for board and superintendent comments, starting with Mrs. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really good to be back. Thank you for the phone calls and all the acts of kindness during my illness. Want to thank the report on Chris. I'm looking right at you. Price and Chief Turner. Stephanie and I were sitting here thinking, you think there's a way that we can get on that flight to at least supervise the students while they're over there cooking, and we'll just watch. But I think that's an awesome opportunity for students who really intend to go forth with culinary arts. And I also want to congratulate, let's see my own writing here, Matthew for his presidential award in math and science. That is just awesome, awesome, awesome. I know that's a great opportunity to be acknowledged by the President of the United States, a presidential award. So I want to congratulate him on that. I want to thank everyone who's worked so diligently during this summer to prepare for our students as they go back to school next week. And I hope that I'm able to tour a few of the schools on the first day. Haven't been able to do that in quite a while, but I do plan to take it slow and easy and at least get out to see 4 or 5, at least the first day. And then the following weeks to come, hopefully I can get to some of the other schools. But I can, as said before, when the district was small, we did all 13 schools in one day, and now it's what, 30, have we hit 36 yet? Schools is 36, 37 schools, what is it? 37 new schools, 37 schools, so I know it'll take me more than a week to do 37 new schools, the district. But I hope everyone had a wonderful, safe holiday, and just be ready, geared up for another 2012, 2013 school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Dr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 18 budgets. I've never passed one on the 14th of August in my whole 18 years. Just thought I'd get that word out to the folks. How are we going to go to county council if we don't know what we're going to, how much money we have? I mean, how are we going to do anything? We're just, it's just getting, the funny season is here, and I guess it will stay for the next few years. But I also was very impressed with your report, Jeff and Debbie. I guess Debbie's gone, but because I had no idea what this flexibility waiver meant. And while I'm not overly impressed with the waiver, I am impressed with your report. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Fleming. Dr. Burgess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also wanted to congratulate Matthew Owens for his presidential award. Ms. Anderson already talked about that. I want to thank y'all for the reports. Those were really good. Thank you so much, and I learned a lot. I want to congratulate our culinary teacher. I think that just is an excellent example of how that program networks with business in the community to make something happen for students. So that's pretty cool. Still want to go to Australia, though. But I don't want to supervise, and I don't want to cook. And I'm also looking forward to a great school year, and I'm really excited about Westwood opening up and all the new programs and all the kids coming back with smiling faces. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Burgess. Ms. Spector?
I just also want to congratulate everyone. I'm not going to name the names off again, but I'd also like to tell Jeff and that the report was great tonight. And also just to wish everybody a great year. Let us know what we can do to help, and we look forward to coming out and seeing everybody in the schools.
Thank you, Ms. Spector. Mrs. Brill?
Wanted to say welcome back to Melinda. We missed you.
Thank you.
Glad you're feeling better. You look great. You look rested. I wanted to tell Dr. Fleming that I did try to vote on the budget in June. I think I was the only one. I tried to pass it in June.
Okay, y'all can go ahead and blame it
At
on
least
me
we
for
now
tabling
have
it.
one. So that's good news. And wanted to thank Blythewood Rotary Club for their cooperation with you all. Wishes and good luck for a new school year. It's a very exciting time for everybody, including my 2-year-old grandson. He starts school on Monday. So I'm going to be a nervous grandma. I may sneak over and check on him, but it is truly exciting. And thank you all for all your preparations this summer and getting ready and all the work that goes into maintaining a world-class school district. I'm deeply grateful for all the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brill. Mr. Manning?
I talked enough.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight, and at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we go into a second executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Moved by Mr. Manning. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Anderson? Yes. Second by Ms. Anderson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote.
Raise your right hand.
Got it, Joe? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much.